So you bought your Grenadier with the factory winch. That's a great option. Now you need to do some things with that winch before you can use it. And today we're going to talk about those things. But is the way that Red Winch tells you to rig the winch the best way? Well, we're going to look at a couple different ways. So stick around and let's get this winch ready to roll. Before you use the winch in your Grenadier, there's a couple steps that you have to take. The first step is making sure that the remote control is synced to the winch. So if you look in your glove box, the remote control is right here and it looks like this. The other thing you have to do is when you're using your winch, your vehicle has to be running. And in order to use the winch, don't forget you have to switch on the power to it, which is the 500 amp switch on your overhead control panel. We've already synced this. The instructions are very easy. They're in your owner's manual. It takes no time at all. But essentially, you power on your remote, you hold down the in and out button for 3 seconds, have someone flip that 500 amp switch, and you'll hear a click up front, and that means you've been synced. Easy, it works flawlessly, or at least it did for us. So now let's see how we rig this thing. Just a quick couple housekeeping items before we start showing the rigging. If you haven't looked at your winch yet or opened it up, you basically have a winch cover, which is your license plate cover. You push it slightly to the left and then lift it up and it locks back in place. And that's how you access the winch cable. You also have a clutch lever on the front. If the clutch lever is up, that's winding in the lock mode. If you put your clutch lever to the side, that is out or free spool. So very easy to use, just in and out. So now you've opened your license plate. You've free spooled out some of the rope, and it's easier to do with the out button on your remote. And you can see that this winch line does not have a thimble. It's pure rope. So contrast what we saw on the Grenadier with what came with my Jeep, and you can see that the cable on the Jeep has a stout metal thimble on it with the cable running through the thimble. And that does two things. That keeps the radius of the bend on your soft synthetic line at an optimal angle so that you're not pinching and weakening the threads, and it gives you a metal connector for your sort of winch connection, whether you choose to use a hook like the Jeep came with or some other device. It gives you a nice solid connector for that does not pull on a synthetic line. And unfortunately, Grenadier did not give you instructions on how to use this rope. So today, we're going to show you what Red Winch recommends, and I'm also going to show you an alternative way to do it. So let's see how Red Winch recommends that you spool this rope. So you may be tempted to simply hook your shackle directly to the line. But as we saw on the Jeep, if you do that, you're not managing the radius of your rope. And if the radius isn't big enough, you pinch these braids, you put too much stress on particular sections of this rope, and you can wear it out faster. God forbid, over time, you might weaken it to the point that it fails. So, Red Winch does not recommend that you simply hook your shackle to the end of this line. Red Winch's solution to that radius bend on the winch line is the Red Winch S-Ring 50. This is a 3 1/8, I believe, 3 1/8 inch diameter outside snatch ring that they sell. Now I will say it's not available in the US, so if you're ordering it to the US, basically double the price. And what you do, and what Red Winch says to do, is to simply slip this snatch ring into the end of your winch line. So now you have a nice radius on your winch line. You're not pinching it. Then you simply take your soft shackle, you run it through, and that becomes the connection point for your winch. And that works great. As it is right there, that would work great to run your winch. But it does have, in my mind, a couple downsides. Number one is you have to use a soft shackle. And some people might like to use steel bow shackles. So given the size of this winch ring, you cannot put it in this way. However, the pin does fit. But in looking at the Red Winch website, they recommend this pulley for soft shackles, not for steel bow shackles. So I would not feel comfortable using a bow shackle. You don't want to have any deformation. You don't want to scratch up the inside, which will then just make it rougher anytime you use a soft shackle and create some abrasion. So with the Red Winch, the S-ring, and a soft shackle. And the second thing is, if you wanted to leave this on your winch rope, don't know why you would, but if you did, if this was wrapped around your line and tied against the fair lead, the license plate does not close. So it's too big to utilize the license plate closure. So you would have to take this off every time. It's not a big deal to take this off or put it back on. But the problem comes in, now you have a winch line that you could accidentally suck into your drum because you have nothing holding it. So now you need a separate piece in order to keep this winch line from accidentally going into your fair lead and onto the drum, and then that becomes a hassle. So what can you do to ensure that your winch line doesn't go into the fair lead and onto the drum, which creates a real headache? You have you have to pick up something like this. This is just a small piece of plastic. It's from Max Trax. It's called the Winch widget. It's got a little magnet on the back of it, so when you're not using it, if you have a metal bumper like the Grenadier, it will just adhere to the bumper and you won't lose it. But what this does is it fits through the winch line like this and creates a situation where the winch line cannot go into the fair lead. So what you do with this is you winch in and keep your fingers out of the way. All right, so safety first always. See, you winch in, you snug it up, and now your winch line is protected. You're not going to lose it. It's snug, it's not flapping around, and it's up tight against the fair lead. So if you're using the Red Winch S-Ring 50, grab yourself something like this. It doesn't have to be this one, but make sure you get something that's snug and flush because you want your license plate to go back down. So that's the rigging as recommended by Red Winch, and perfectly acceptable. But there are other options. But now let's take a look at another option, and this is the option that I've chosen. But I'm not going to get rid of this, and I'm going to tell you why at the end of the video. So let's get set up and I'll show you the other option. So the other option is to use a permanently mounted attachment point for your winch line. The one that we chose, and one that I've seen a lot of people on the Grenadier forum choose, is the Factor 55 Flat Link. The one that we chose is the Flat Link E, and the reason we chose that is because it's designed to use both a bow shackle and a soft shackle as it's radiused on the outside. And what the Flat Link has is the attachment point, a pin, drops into the hole, and a snap ring. So in order to utilize this or to install it at home, you do need a pair of snap ring pliers. So I assume that a lot of people are doing this installation as is. But one thing that you have to realize when you install a flat link is that this pin, and this comes from conversations I had with Factor 55, this pin is slightly smaller in radius than is optimal for the 11 millimeter Grenadier winch line. So in order to rectify that and make sure we have the right radius, you also pick up the standard spool. So let me show you how this connects. The way that you utilize this spool is that you insert it in the end of the winch cable. You then insert the spool and the winch cable into the flat link, drop the pin in. You grab your snap ring pliers, you reinstall the snap ring. Now we've got our snap ring in, and make sure, doubly sure, when you put this in, the snap ring is fully seated into the groove. Otherwise it could pop out and you could lose your pin. We're going to winch this in and show you why people are so fond of the flat link. do be careful when you're winching because it doesn't stop on a dime. So if your fingers are behind something and you let off on the button, it's still going to reel in. So just be careful. And the advantage of the flat link is once you get your line in, the flat link does not have to sit out like this. You do not have to find an alternative hooking point for it. It snugs up against the fair lead. Just like that. So that's how it's going to stay. It doesn't need anything else. It's a permanent fixture, so it's there when you're ready to use it. You don't have to assemble anything. You don't have to dig in your bag if someone else has their gear out. And your license plate bracket works as intended. So that's why the flat link is an awesome choice for this application. So what do I see the advantages of the Red Winch setup? Well, number one, price. Even including shipping, this S-Ring 50 and the MaxTrax winch widget come in at right around $100. So from an economic standpoint, it's reasonably inexpensive if you're looking at top quality stuff. And both of these are very well respected companies. Red Winch makes some beautiful stuff. So, definitely good quality. The other thing is that this is tucked away safely in your vehicle when not in use. I doubt that there are very many people looking at this as a coveted item that they might try to steal from your vehicle. So I would say from price and security, this is a great choice. The only downside I see with this is you have to use a soft shackle. I don't have a problem with soft shackles, but if you prefer bow shackle, then unless Red Winch approves it, I would be a little hesitant to do that. So that's what I think about this combination. I'm going to keep this in my vehicle for sure, and depending on where I am, I may be using this or the Factor 55. Now, let's take a look at the Factor 55. So what are the advantages of the Factor 55? Well, again, you have a very beautifully manufactured piece of gear made in the US. It is designed for both a bow shackle and a soft shackle. It's permanently mounted, so it's always ready to go when you are. It fits snug and allows you to utilize the cover, the license plate cover that Grenadier puts on. So for that standpoint, this thing is a great piece of gear for the Grenadier. What do I think downsides are? Well, really not many. From a cost perspective, and this isn't comparing apples and apples. So this is a permanently mounted piece of gear. The other is a snatch pulley and a widget. The price for the flat link and the spool, don't forget that spool, is about $190. So it is more expensive, but again, you're getting, in my mind, more for your money because of what this is. And number two, and this is why I said earlier that I think I want to keep both sets, is that even though it's easier to free spool this with the remote control, you can set this to free spool and pull this out. Factor 55 is pretty coveted gear. There is a possibility in the right location that you might have some prying eyes eyeing this piece of gear and wanting it for themselves. They could pull this out and with just a pair of snap ring pliers walk off with your beautiful Factor 55 flat link. So there may be times in certain locations where I would want to just not have it mounted permanently. I would want to go ahead and use that widget. And that's really the reason that I'm keeping the other two items in my kit, is because I want that optionality. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing these two great ways to rig your Grenadier winch line. The choice is up to you. I think both are great. Both have advantages and disadvantages, but you're not going to go wrong with either one. And one thing I will recommend is if you're considering an option, take the time to call the company. They're a wealth of information and they're happy to chat with you about it and make sure you get the right equipment for the job. And as always, if you like this type of content, please take a moment to give us a thumbs up, hit that sub button in the lower right hand corner, and share this with all your like-minded friends. Take care, and we'll see you outdoors.